Hello and welcome to week 8 of Advanced Exercise Physiology for Concordai University. I am Professor Mark Baines, and a few things to cover here. Shouldn't be very long, just brief ideas that are hopefully helpful to you, closing on week 7 and going into week 8 with only 4 weeks, including this week, to finish up this term, this course. First and foremost, as far as concepts of strength, when you talk about any activity where you're engaging very short duration activity at high intensity, we're talking about energy system being adenosine triphosphate, creatine phosphate, anaerobic work. We're talking about basically maximal power, maximal speed, maximal all-out effort. Generally speaking, type 2X muscle fibers, we're talking about 5 seconds or less in activity. Could be a little longer, but generally speaking, that's what we're talking about. Start going 10, 15, 20 seconds, you're still in that range, but we're losing a little bit of that, losing a few percentage points as far as actual maximal output, despite maximal efforts we might be making. We're talking about speed, we're talking about above 100% VO2 max. We're looking at someone saying we're going to go 130, 140, 150% VO2 max or higher. Okay, because that's actually short duration. VO2 max is not so much of a component of importance. Typically speaking, your VO2 max pace is whatever you can keep up for 10 to 20 minutes. So if you're looking at pacing-wise, effort-wise, it's going to be much higher level than that for activity that you're doing for such a short duration of time, right? That said, we start going past that 10, 15 second, 5 second, 10 second, 15 seconds-ish time frame above creatine phosphate, going more into glycolysis energy system-wise. We're now talking about still maximal strength up to about 30, 40 seconds, but lesser so. Hypertrophy, growth of single muscle fiber or growth of numerous muscle fibers. No one grows one fiber at a time, but hundreds of fibers or a lot of fibers, right? Hypertrophy is growth of muscle fiber, and the predominant time frame for that is about 40, 75 seconds. So when someone says hypertrophy is their goal, that should be the work period. If it's less than that, still going to get some hypertrophy. I'm not going to say it's a 30-second set, you're not going to get hypertrophy. That's just not true. You're going to get some, but you're going to maximize it, the type 2A fibers in particular, and a large predominance of them to a greater extent than any other duration of time in that 40 to 75 second time frame. Keep in mind too, when the book refers to 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, as I'm saying it here now, we're talking about an activity that you can only do for at least 40 seconds and not more than 75 seconds. Otherwise, you're going to lose the maximization of hypertrophy. Same with power. If you can still go for 20 seconds, you're going to get power. If you're trying to get faster or produce more force over that period, there's an aspect of force and distance, and it's still, if you're getting better with your timing, all the things are going to affect power. But maximal power is very, very, very short, ultra short term duration of time for effort. Okay, and we start going towards endurance strength, or strength endurance, really, we should say. We're talking about basically that 1 minute-ish to 3 minutes, okay, and actually even beyond that. For it's still glycolytic, but it's becoming more and more toward aerobic activity. Your book refers to it around 3 minutes or so. Now you're looking at something, if you're all-out activity, is what we're talking about, all-out duration or effort activity. We're talking about something as high as now about, at 3 minutes, about 60% aerobic and about 40% anaerobic. Whereas around 2 minutes, it's still about 2/3, closer to 65, 70%-ish more anaerobic and 30-35% aerobic around that 2 minute time frame. You'll see some variations in some sources with that about 5-10% either way, but generally speaking, you're still predominantly anaerobic by quite a bit. Any activity you can do for 2 minutes or less and not much more than that at that same speed or rate of force production, okay? And then we talk about endurance speed versus speed endurance, or strength endurance versus endurance strength, and so on. Strength endurance is you're strong, but you want to be able to go for longer periods at the same level. We want to build strength endurance. Or you want to work on strength, the endurance of the strength. If you're endurance oriented, you want to go for multiple minutes at a time, but you want to be stronger over that duration of time. Now we're talking about endurance strength. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Same with speed endurance versus endurance speed. You've even heard those terms before. Speed endurance, you're fast, you want to be able to go fast for longer periods. Speed endurance. You have great endurance, but you want to be faster over that great duration, distance of time. Then we're going to talk about endurance speed. Okay. Muscle fiber types, kind of already alluded to it, but the type 2X muscle fibers are involved in those power-related activities, ultra short term in particular, that 10 seconds and less. But type 2A and type 1 are still involved. They're not gone. Make sure you understand that. It's a cyclical thing relative to activity level or intensity level and duration, both. Intensity and duration. Now, where it gets a little sketchy, where sometimes people aren't clear about what's going on, it's very popular these days to go for 10, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and rest 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds. Like, it's a really odd time frame, and I think at times they're not really clear about exercise physiology or about the concepts of physiology as a whole, how the cells respond to stress. What you're really doing is a work output duration that seems to imply anaerobic work. But then the rest period is so short, that's the rest period for aerobic work. So what you're getting is the effort level is high, perception of effort, you're trying very hard, the actual output's going to be low the more you keep repeating such sets, because that 20, 30, 40 second rest period at max is not going to get you more than about 60, 70% ATP. And if you don't get that any more than that ATP, you don't have anywhere near your actual maximal output. Don't confuse perception of effort with such feats of effort versus actual output. The goal is to maximize power and speed and whatnot. You've got to rest for that 3 to 5 minutes. That's a hard and fast rule. I've never seen it be anything else. I have had plenty of track athletes who have tried to run a 100-meter dash, take a 20, 30, 40-second break, and try to run it again. You're not going to get faster if you keep doing that. You're going to slow down. You're not going to get the same speed. You want to keep improving in speed, you got to rest for longer. We can't confuse our cardiovascular readiness for activity, not feeling like we're out of breath and not out of breath, with actual endurance capabilities of the muscle, skeletal muscle. And again, that's what we're ultimately concerned about, as we said before in previous posts in last week's video, talking more about skeletal muscle adaptation in terms of ability to work for longer periods and be stronger, not so much the heart strength improvement. Will heart grow like any other muscle? Yeah, this cardiac muscle has some striated muscle fiber, but it's also unusual. It's between the involuntary, voluntary pathway, and that you can have some voluntary control, but a lot of it's involuntary as well. That said, type 1 muscle fiber is more toward activity of type 2 and 3 minutes and beyond, where they're the predominant muscle fiber, endurance type work. And of course, most of the work you do in the gym, most of the work you do in your sport, unless you have an endurance sport, is probably going to be type 2A muscle fiber focused in most cases, not all. But if you want to make sure you get enough rest period, 30 to 90 seconds at least for the maximization of your type 2A muscle fibers. Okay. Don't worry about being exact in your posts. I'm not worried about that at all. I think some of you get worried at times that I want you to be perfect with what you say. No, but you have to justify your position. You can't just say I agree or don't agree. You got to give more basis for it. This is an exercise physiology course, not a philosophy course, right? Not to make it too obvious or make it to make it so blunt, but at the same time, you need to actually give a rationale for it. What you choose to apply in the days, months, and years beyond are going to be up to you. But at the same time, can you imagine telling an athlete of yours that, I could look up a lot more research on this and understand more about it, but I don't think I need to because I know my sport. That would really make no sense. And that particular athlete would probably lose a lot of respect for you because they would feel like you're not making an effort to get better, yet you expect your athlete to get better. You expect your athlete to put in the time and the effort, but you're going to go with that same lesson plan you've had, that same game plan, that same practice session plan you've had for years and never change it because you know the sport. That makes no sense. The whole goal is growth this 11 weeks. I want to see you grow immensely. I'm going to push you for that. You know I'm going to push you for that. I expect the same of me. I expect if I look back at a course I've taught in the past, similar to this one, my posts would be better now. My responses to you would be better now than they were in the past. That is always the goal. Don't worry about being exact, but you need to show growth. You need to show an effort to relate the heart rate zone that you think it should be, not be exact that it's, oh, you said 75%, it's supposed to be 70%. No. But you need to actually relate the information. It needs to be there, okay? And of course, before you make your post, I highly recommend, before you post your post, if you will, post your response in a discussion board each week, to get the most out of it. If I were you, I'd create the post on my own, then I would go and look at a couple of the other posts that people have actually created, maybe a lot of them, take 20, 30 minutes to do it, maybe more, to look over what else is written, then go back and look at yours. Did you miss something glaring? There's something you could have put in there? Kind of expect the people who post later to be putting better posts out because you had the opportunity to look at everyone else's. Okay? I don't grade you that way, but at the same time, you would actually behoove yourself to do that. If you're one of the first posters, well, then you make your initial post, look at other people's posts as the week goes on, come back and add more to your post. You can actually add more to it, and you're graded according to all the data you put out there. Okay? Keep that in mind. It's how you get better, by learning from other people, right? Not just your own efforts that you make. And no one gets better alone. No one does. That said, moving on to our week 8. Chronic disease risk, we're talking about chapters 14 and 19. We're talking about the risks biologically that you can't control. Number 1, your gender, your age, your race. You are what you are. Okay? But you can actually limit those biological stressors, or the impact, we should say, of your biological age, if you will, biological risk or stress, by environmental factors. Sure, climate, what you do in the room, but specifically how you adapt your work and rest periods affect behaviors, affects the environment that they're in, plays a big role in how much risk tolerance someone has And don't make the mistake of reading what we often see in our textbooks and research studies say it would apply that this level of work period is the best for VO2 max improvement or the best for reducing risk. If they don't also say not just 30 seconds, but is the implication that 30 seconds all out, 30 seconds at 70% intensity, 30 seconds of 100% VO2 max, 30% of 60% max heart rate, what are you talking about? RPE should be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, what? Those are the clarifications you need to make. They don't always make them. So in order to show that you have the understanding of it, you need to make sure you're making those statements in your posts and information you create so that it becomes a piece of cake over time. It really does for breaking down the expectations you have for your practices, for your gains, for your athletes, and applying this information longer term. Inflammation. To avoid long-term chronic risk. Short-term risk is, something you get an injury and it's gone in a few weeks. Once it persists for 6 months or more, it's referred to as a chronic issue. Okay, that's not something you want to have. Someone have any environmental or behavioral chronic issues. The biological ones are going to be what they are, but we can reduce that stress by changing our environmental and our behavioral risk through the stressors we apply to our athletes and helping them both at the time during practice, during games, and beyond. Inflammation happens naturally. Blood flows to the area, water flows to the area with the blood, right? Nutrients delivered to a tissue. We have all sorts of cellular responses for dramatic stress or traumatic stress to a given area, all very normal. But when the inflammation lasts, when it continues well past the point that it should, when you eat something that's still affecting you days later, that's not good. When you have an exercise stress that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days later it still affects you, that's not good. That kind of inflammation can become chronic, certainly having a major impact on you right now. If inflammation keeps increasing or is maintained, recovery is not possible. Improvement's not possible. Progress is not possible, at least to the same extent. So that's something we want to make sure we're constantly aware of. Inflammation comes in many shapes and sizes. Part of the recovery process is reducing that as much as possible. And we have a lot of ways of doing that, predominantly with what we do in practice. Don't just talk about what you drink as far as water, nutrition, sleep, all that, all great stuff. Our primary job is in front of the athlete. So what do we do with them then to make sure we reduce the risks of inflammation longer term? Central versus peripheral fatigue. You're just tired and worn out. Can't do much. Coordination's lacking. Probably talking about central fatigue. The body just needs rest. Got to go light activity today to help recuperate, to replenish that body system. Below 60% VO2 max activity, definitely below 70% max heart rate, RPE level 6 or lower on a scale 1 to 10. Light stuff to recover. Peripheral fatigue. Well, if you did you went for a sprint workout today, you ran sprints, and you can go hit the weights after that. But if you want to do heavy strength loaded type 2X muscle fiber, type 2A muscle fiber strength exercises for legs, that's a mistake. You're already pretty worn out peripherally, so you probably want to do like upper body training. We can actually focus on a different area. That's how we can adapt around peripheral fatigue during training. But we have to take that into account with whatever we're doing. That rest period needs to be adequate both between sets as well as time between sessions for recovery. I think I said it once before, I'll make sure it's really clear. Basic endurance type work, maybe you could do more than once a day. Top athletes can do, we're not talking about the top elite athletes who can do anything. The average person, 24 to 48 hours between endurance type focused workouts. Hypertrophy, 48 to 72 hours between workouts of the same type. Upper body push day. Do it again 48 to 72 hours later. Taking longer than that, too much time. Too much inflammation shouldn't be happening. Maximal power and speed, we're talking about 3 to 4 days. Okay. And then that said, performance term duration and intensity, we're talking about ultra short term, 1 to 10 seconds. We're talking about short term going more towards glycolytic, 10 seconds to 180 seconds. Moderate, we're talking about 3 to 20 minutes. We're talking about that moving more and more from glycolytic into aerobic type energy production. These are all out efforts, right? Moderates can be below 90% VO2 max. Intermediates can be more like well below 90% VO2 max. Actually, moderate could be as high as 100% VO2 max if they're really, really well conditioned. And of course, anything long duration's going to be more like 60% VO2 max or less in most cases, except for elite athletes. That said, we're going into our 8th week with a test this week. I would highly encourage you to once again read over your chapters at least a couple times, email me if questions, look over the posts from previous posts, my sample posts, and your previous test for a idea of how kind of questions you're going to be asked. I'm sure you do fine. If you have questions, email me, Hope you're doing well. If you've reached out to everybody, I think this term already this week to see how you're doing, please check in if you have problems. Looking forward to being with you for a few more weeks. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.